Tonight I'll read Chapter 5, Pursued. "We're still alive," said Sam, astonished. "That's amazing." Emily laughed. It was amazing. There was a soft thud beside them, and she turned to see the black-clad warrior slumped against the wall, clutching a shoulder. Of course, thought Emily, that's where the bullet hit. She knelt beside the warrior, who was smaller and more slender than she'd first thought, the black leather body armour bulking out the athletic figure it protected. She wondered if he was only a young man. A dark, bloody stain was spreading slowly on the stone path. "We need to get you to the hospital," Emily said. "No." The voice was weak, almost inaudible, muffled and distorted beneath the mask. "Not hospital, Abbey." Even distorted, the voice was soft and on the edge of deepening. A young man's voice, Emily decided. There was a thin stone bridge a little further up the canal. The warrior motioned towards it. "That way." Sam picked up the warrior's spear, still covered in gore and broken scales from the dead creature, and came to help. Emily and Sam took an arm each over their shoulders. Despite the wet clothing, the warrior was surprisingly light between them. They hadn't got very far when they heard shouting in the distance. Emily had wondered if the wardens or whoever had shot the warrior would be drawn by the creature's fiery death. Now she knew the answer. The warrior stiffened and tried to break away from them. "Go!" the muffled voice said urgently. "Leave me. If the people who tried to kill me return and find you here, then you will not be safe." Emily looked at Sam, who shook his head. She nodded. They would not leave the wounded warrior. "You must go. I can't put you in danger. Not after—" The sentence trailed off into wet, painful-sounding coughs. Emily saw the reflections of torchlights in the distance. "After you saved us already?" she finished the sentence. "We owe you. Sam, hurry." The warrior tried to struggle, but was too weak to put up much of a resistance. Emily and Sam broke into a half-run, the warrior stumbling between them. They had almost crossed the bridge when a torchlight found them, and there was a cry of triumph behind them. "Faster!" Emily panted. "Go left, down the alleyway," gasped the warrior. The alleyway was narrow, between high walls, and their footsteps echoed loudly back at them as they ran down. The shouting behind them was getting closer. A torch beam picked them out from behind and threw their huge, swaying shadows across a high wall in front of them. To the right was an ornate, arched iron gate. "Through the gate!" Emily unlatched the gate and flung it open with a screech of rusty metal. They stumbled inside. Emily pushed it shut again. The complaining metal would give them warning of their pursuers. Ahead of them, silhouetted against the stars, was a temple. All around them were graves, many marked with a miller's cross. Skeins of night mist were beginning to drift up from the damp ground. Emily shivered, suddenly feeling the chill of the night and her own wet clothes. They threaded their way through the gravestones, as much feeling their way in the darkness as seeing by the dim starlight. Too soon they heard the metal screech as the gate opened. Torch beams stabbed out into the graveyard. Fortunately, the corner of the temple was close, and in moments they were around it and out of sight. At the back of the graveyard were a number of mausoleums, some small and barely large enough to hold a couple of coffins, others large and long enough to hold a longboat. Emily was struck by a horrible thought. "I can't see a way out," she whispered. "Where are we going? We're trapped." The black hooded head rose wearily. "One of the tombs will be marked with the upwelling sign, the sign of water. Find it, and we are saved." Emily saw Sam's eyes flash white in the darkness as he looked at her in panic. They trusted that this young warrior would help them escape, but now it seemed that the warrior's idea of salvation might in fact be spiritual rather than practical. "Keep going," she hissed to Sam. "Look for the sign of water." If that was all they had, then it was still better than nothing. But what did a sign of water look like? As they passed between the tombs, Emily saw carvings of millers' crosses, trees, fire, ravens, anvils, all the usual graveyard decorations, but nothing that seemed to fit the description. Emily heard crunching on gravel behind them, and a torch beam flicked across the tombs to their left. Then a sixth sense warned her, and she dropped to the ground, pulling the warrior and Sam with her as the beam swept over where they'd been standing a moment before. The warrior grunted in pain, landing awkwardly on the grass. Immediately the torch beam swept back and lingered above them, lighting up the tomb behind them. They lay in the shadow beneath, hardly daring to breathe. "Hey, Taverner!" called a voice, seemingly only a few meters away. "Come up here, I heard something." Another voice, more distant, replied, slightly nervously, "Something like a person, or something like a corpse, clawing its way out of the earth to feast on human flesh?" "Like a person, idiot! Come on, who'd want to eat your chicken flesh anyway, even if they were dead?" "This is stupid," grumbled Taverner, his whiny voice carrying in the damp air. "What did these people do anyway, Ferriby? I'm sure 2 of them are only kids." "The chief told us to catch them, and that's what we'll do. Anything else is not our problem." Emily lay on the damp ground, looking blindly up at the torchlit tomb above her, trying to think of a way for them to escape. She couldn't think of one. Ferriby spoke again. His voice sounded even closer. "Isn't the Cup and Ring near here? We could go there afterwards." Taverner suddenly sounded more enthusiastic. "Right, I know the one. I think they do the Adderblood beer there. I'd like to try a pint of that or 2 of that." Emily's thoughts finally caught up with what her eyes were seeing, and with a jolt she realized that along the top of the tomb, a few feet behind them, was a scrolled carving that seemed to spring up in the middle and then flow away on either side in 2 waves. Was that the sign of water? She nudged the warrior and gestured up towards the carving. The warrior nodded and started crawling under the torchlight towards the tomb, followed by Sam. Emily followed on behind. A second torch beam cut across from a different angle, almost catching Sam as he wriggled across towards the tomb. Now they were closer to the tomb. Emily could see that its stone doorway was set back several feet under a shallow portico, leaving it in darkness. Sam followed the warrior into the dark portico and disappeared. When Emily got there, she realized that they had regained their feet. The warrior was leaning motionless against the stone door. Sam was pressed against the portico wall behind him. Keeping to the shadows, Emily carefully stood up. Their pursuers had gone quiet. Emily bent and found a stone on the ground and, careful not to reveal herself, threw it hard across the graveyard. It landed with a clatter some distance away. Immediately, the 2 torch beams left the tomb and stabbed away across the graveyard towards the noise. Emily leaned out from behind the cover of the stone portico and risked a glimpse outside to see how close the men were. As she did so, one of the torch beams flicked back and caught her full in the face, blinding her. "There they are!" And that's the end of chapter 5. Good night.